It is good that we are here. Why is it good? Because we see Jesus in glory. And why do we want that? This past week, I pestered the 6th grade boys with this kind of questioning. And every time they answered why we should want something, I'd ask again, and why do we want that? Now that we're in the heart of Lent, and some of the things we're doing can begin to weigh on us, we might ask ourselves, why are we doing this? You might say, because we want to go to heaven. So I ask you, why do you want that? And eventually, you ask this question enough, you get to the best answer: to be happy. And asking why do you want to be happy is a bit like asking, why does a square have 4 sides? 4 sides is part of what makes a square, and happiness is what every human being wants. All of our motivations eventually come back to that desire to be happy. Why do we want to go to heaven? Because the unveiled glory of God in heaven is the only thing that makes a human being truly and permanently happy. So why do we do what we do for Lent? To become happy. Now, when you're craving steak on a Friday, it might not feel like you're on the path to happiness. And yet a significant percentage of the 1 billion Catholics in the world do actually stay faithful to their Lenten sacrifices. Clearly, we must on some level believe that there is a connection between this self-denial and happiness. What is that? Well, there's the peace that comes from increasing our control over our appetites. There's the clarity that comes from seeing how being full isn't enough to be happy. There's the confidence that comes from self-control and the joy of doing the right thing, especially when it's difficult. In short, the pain of self-denial leads to happiness because it leads to virtue. Virtuous people are happier people. Being virtuous brings peace and confidence and usually brings some level of success, even in our earthly lives. But building virtue, that can be painful, which is why we need these reminders. It's why the church always gives us the transfiguration of Jesus on Mount Tabor on the 2nd Sunday of Lent. It's right after Jesus first tells his apostles that he's going to be crucified. He sets out for Jerusalem, prepares himself to die a gruesome death, and tells his disciples they need to carry their cross and share in his sufferings. And so after he shocks them with what looks like misery and failure, Jesus takes Peter, James, and John up the mountain for this dramatic revelation of his glory. Why? Because the apostles, and we today, need to be reminded of why we should deny ourselves and carry our crosses. Why we should love our enemies and forgive those who hurt us. Why we should forsake money and power and pleasure to pursue holiness. Why? Because despite the perceptions of the world, all of these sacrificial, humble, and painful acts of love will ultimately make us happy. Even though many things in this world can make us kind of happy for a little while, or even for many years, nothing in existence offers the kind of perfect, eternal happiness that comes from perfect union with God. And in a world broken by sin and caught up in lies, getting to God and to the truth and to real happiness requires a lot of difficult and painful things. Lord, it is good that we are here, says Peter. He's experiencing in that moment a tiny foretaste, both of seeing God's glory in Jesus and of the glory that human beings will experience in heaven. The vision of God's glory will fill our hearts and minds with perfect joy, and even our bodies will be gloriously transformed, immortal, perfectly healthy, and immensely powerful. Perfect control over the body, no disease or pain, no limitations on our movement, absolutely beautiful. The resurrected body promised to us is something even the healthiest, most attractive, most athletic person in the world could not even begin to compete with. Which brings us back to the point. To get to that resurrection of the body, we have to first go through the crucifixion. And by showing his apostles a tiny glimpse of the glorified body just a few months before he's betrayed and brutally murdered, Jesus is giving the apostles and us an answer to that all-important question: why go through this? So remember to place all of the challenges of Lent and our Catholic faith in general in the context of growing in virtue, in the context of your own happiness and glory. If you're weary of my preaching about obedience and sin and conversion and holiness, look at the Transfiguration. Lent is not about how bad you are. It's about how glorious you are and what stands between you and that glory. The path forward is not more shame. It's more hope. Not a hope that you can get your act together and earn salvation, but hope in God's goodness, which accounts for your weakness. So climb the mountain of prayer every day, even if it's messy and distracted. When struggling with Lent or breaking a bad habit or just trying to be a decent Christian, telling yourself, I'm doing this so I can be holy and happy, will help a little. But it won't go far if you have no context for what that happiness looks like. So give yourself that context with the Transfiguration. Why do young men read comic books? Why do aspiring athletes watch the Olympics? Why do authors read other authors' books? Why do scientists study past breakthroughs? To see what the goal looks like. We are motivated by what we can imagine. Imagination is not always fictional. Our imagination is part of God's image in us that allows us to see past our immediate sensory experience and to act accordingly. So just as a child fills their imagination with heroes, fill your imagination with true happiness. Listen to the Son, with whom the Father is well pleased. Learn Scripture and the lives of the saints. Make time to picture Jesus in glory, to imagine your own resurrected and glorified body, to imagine being even more virtuous in this life. Though we do have to come down from the mountain, though we have to go about our daily life outside times of prayer and reflection and imagination, these visions of glory and virtue and joy can dwell in our hearts so that when life seems to knock us down, we can draw on moments like the Transfiguration and hear the Lord say to us, "Rise and do not be afraid." Despite your doubts, it is good that you are here. Do not be afraid of the trials that lay ahead. Rather than robbing you of happiness, if you keep your eyes on Jesus, they become stepping stones to what God has always wanted for you: eternal joy.